Hello friends, Kitty here, and it's been a couple weeks, but we're back again with another RebelKitty Report. This is the RebelKitty Report for the week of April 7th, 2024.
Why are you good?
And we're back. I took like a couple weeks there to figure out my Zev handgun. I was back out last weekend, or the weekend before that, trying to troubleshoot all my friggin' failure to extract problems. And then I ended up getting rid of it. And then I ended up getting the true precision barrel for my SIG and had to go try that. So it was like, took a couple weeks to focus on that and the Discord, which the Discord link is still open to anyone. I'm throwing that out there to anyone who's kind of a fan of the channel or just, wants to talk with some like-minded cute folks about guns or hunting or radios or what have you. But yeah, thank you for being patient with me. I'm like, it's kind of my personal life always comes first. You got to do that. But we're back again with the current events for the day. And we're starting with this one with what the heck's going on in Hungary. So in Hungary today, there are thousands of protesters taking to the streets to protest the current Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban was recently implicated in a corruption scheme and has been accused by his former justice minister and her ex-husband of a whole host of corruption allegations. And it seems that this has resonated with the Hungarian people, and they are calling for the resignation of Viktor Orban. The political situation in Hungary has been kind of interesting over the years. They are part of NATO, technically, but they have Viktor Orban has expressed wanting to get closer ties with Russia and China, and is generally kind of seen as a more conservative and anti-Western individual. Now, the figure who brings these allegations up is primarily Peter Magyar, who is a prominent politician and lawyer and kind of controversial figure in Hungary. He is often criticizing the government and has been doing so for over 10 years. And he was married to the justice minister there. Although it has come to light since, for one reason or another, this ex-wife has accused Magyar of being, generally just kind of a terrible person, very abusive and prone to some very unhinged behaviors. So the accusations in this case kind of go both ways. You have Magyar, who's pointing out some perhaps very legitimate corruption in Hungary, and Magyar's character being attacked, which seems to itself be perhaps a little dubious. So, I guess we'll see what becomes of this. I am not entirely sure how this could pan out. I have a feeling that Orban is not going to resign anytime soon, but it is curious that in a relatively stable NATO country, we have a political situation like this occurring. And our next news story takes us over to Syria, where we talk often about whatever's happening there. And this past week, Israel carried out two of some of its deadliest attacks in history with Syria. One even striking the capital Damascus and killing several Iranian diplomats and basically leveling the entire Iranian embassy there. And it's been an ongoing escalating situation between Syria and Israel. Israel has historically had issues with the kind of Russian-backed Assad regime. And it seems that this has been some kind of attempt at revenge or, spite, whatever have you, against Iran. And it's interesting to see how this will develop from here. I can't see it really going down anytime soon or going away. I feel like we might see more tensions between the two countries. But perhaps this is where that starts. And a big story that might have flown under the radar for many but was pretty close to home, there's been a sort of collapse in diplomatic relations between Mexico and Ecuador. This past week in Quito, the capital, it appears that the Ecuadorian military decided to just breach the Mexican embassy and arrest a former Ecuadorian vice president. The move basically shocked shocked Mexico entirely and took them off guard. It seems it was not coordinated ahead of time and is a pretty unusual sort of move for any countries to make. As many might remember, Julian Assange spent many years inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and the British government, even as much as they wanted to, couldn't just storm in and seize him because that would have caused some diplomatic issues with Ecuador. And then here we are, Ecuador doing that straight up to Mexico. So it is kind of curious. So Jorge Glass, who was the former vice president there, was accused of a host of corruption charges ranging back to 2016, it looks like. And so the Ecuadorian government has been trying to arrest him for at least some period and decided that basically they would just make the executive decision to do it anyway, which has been received pretty poorly by Mexico. And Mexico's President Andres Obrador has since withdrawn all diplomats from their embassy in Ecuador. Kind of interesting. It's not two countries you hear about every day having issues, but we'll see if this develops any further. And an interesting story from another place that doesn't get enough discussion, but in Myanmar, it seems that the Unity Government and People's Defense Forces carried out a successful attack recently against the military, which, at least since 2021, in a coup, has taken control of the country and is basically claiming like de facto rulership over it. And so you have these anti-coup forces, like the People's Defense Force, that are attempting to retake the country and restore some form of democratic order. The People's Defense Forces claimed this past week that with over 30 drones in a single attack, they were able to destroy a military depot. The military regime has acknowledged the attack, although they downplayed the effects of it. But it does seem like at least the Myanmar people are still fighting the good fight against a pretty oppressive and despotic regime. Another story that is kind of just an odd one that keeps flaring up every now and then, trying to figure out what's going on here. Thought I'd share with y'all. But anyway, the Zaporizhzhia power plant in Ukraine, which is a nuclear-run power plant, has been attacked this past week. And kind of since the start of the Russo-Ukraine war, it's been in never-ending back and forth and accusations of each other attacking the plant. If many folks might remember, in the beginning of the war, Russia came in and seized the power plant and currently to this day retains primary control of it. And they claim that Ukraine repeatedly attacks it with drones right on the reactors. And likewise, Ukraine accuses Russia of staging these sorts of events and then blaming them for it. It is all rather curious because there seems to not be super sufficient evidence either way to suggest it's one or the other. But I do find it kind of like a really odd idea that Ukraine would want to do any kind of damage to this power plant, as A, it is hugely important to their infrastructure, and B, I mean, if they've already had a nuclear disaster once, I feel like they probably aren't super keen on having a big irradiated wasteland, even any more than they already do. So to me, like, it just seems like a really weird thing for Ukraine to do, like just hit the reactor towers a few times to scare them. And it's enough damage for the atomic organizations to notice and to report on, but it's not like I feel like I see no definitive evidence either way of who the source is. It just, to me, logically, I can't reason how or why the Ukrainians would do that or what they would accomplish. Whereas, I guess Russia in some way kind of can benefit and say, oh, look at these unhinged Ukrainians trying to attack this plant. They surely can't be allowed to run it. So it's like, I feel like the Russians benefit more in this situation, and like the Ukrainians benefit very little. It's all a very interesting story. I've included a link to at least one, but this has kind of just been an ongoing back and forth, without ever any side providing satisfactory proof to their claims. So we're just kind of left here guessing. But just thought I'd throw in my 2 cents on that. The last story I'd kind of like to leave you with today, it's a bit more uplifting, but the ladies of the YPJ, or the People's Defense Force, or Women's Defense Forces, celebrated their 11th anniversary there in Syria, which congratulations to them. But basically all the way back in 2013, at sort of the climax of the Syrian civil war, the local Syrian defense forces decided that, hey, we needed an all-female battalion, and women are essential to the revolution and enforcing a democratic society. So the Women Defense Forces were formed. And shortly after, during the siege of Kobani, they received sort of international recognition for being pretty determined and resolute fighters. Despite being, entirely out-resourced by their adversaries at the time, they've since kind of really become a professional fighting force, and even have anti-terror units and special forces and things, and are really quite remarkable ladies. Probably my heroes, IRL. Like, they definitely kick ass and take names. So thank you, ladies, doing the good work out there, and I can only hope that the rest of us can, even have a fraction of that total badassery. Alrighty, well, thank you for joining, friends. As always, love you. Bye.